I'll tell you later.
Good evening, NNJR. Thanks for joining us. I'm Shannon Muller, and this is our monthly gathering for February. So thanks for joining us and tuning in. Tonight, I'm very excited to have Marshall Knutson, a phenomenal automotive photographer, presenting tonight, with Rich Barry being our moderator. So thanks for joining in. What we're going to have happen right now is we're going to turn this over to Rudy. Rudy's going to give a little overview to any new members we have, and then we are going to launch into the call. So take it away, Rudy. Okay. You have to unmute.
There we go.
There you go.
It's working. All right. Sorry about that. So just wanted to thank you, Shannon. Just wanted to take a few minutes to welcome any new members that are on as we still work through restrictions with COVID. I'm sorry, my apologies that my better half, Nancy, could not join tonight. But if you're a new member and you've received communications, more than likely you've received them from her. And she's really good about sending out the emails, as well as if you've been interested in getting some NNJR swag. So we're looking forward to things opening up later on this year. And this is Shannon and the team have done a great job over the past year since the pandemic started about doing these monthly meetings and bringing some great guests. So this is one of those things that brings us together when we can't be physically together. And so hopefully you'll find this enjoyable, and just hang in there. If you're new and you're still trying to figure out whether you want to do DE, we can get you in contact with the right people. My advice is don't be afraid to ask. Either reach out to Nancy or myself. And if we don't know the answer, we'll get you in touch with who does know it. So we're here to help, and whatever we can do, by all means. So I think, like I say, hang in there a couple more months. We're all getting through this, and I think you'll see the activities really start opening up. Personally, I'm looking forward to doing Concours again. I've got a whole set of Q-tips just sitting over on the other side of the garage that can't wait to be used, as well as all of the waxes that I'm looking at over here. But that's me. So anyway, enough of that. As you can see, I got enough stuff going on in the garage here. Without further ado, I can't wait to see the photography of these guys over here. And with that, Shannon, I'm going to give it back to you.
All right. Thanks, Rudy. I really do like that Eldorado in the background.
It's like driving your living room.
It is. It would be pretty schwanko.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Rich, Barry, and Marshall. Please ask any questions you have in the chat box on YouTube, and I will be feeding those questions to Rich and Marshall. Thanks, guys. Here we go.
All right. Thanks, Shannon. Marshall, you can probably unmute now.
All right.
Welcome, everybody. So this is a good topic to talk about tonight. Let's talk about supercars, which is never a topic that's a bad one to talk about, right? Marshall, you are a NNJR member for almost 5 years, I guess, about 5 years now, you'd say?
5 active years, although I kind of grew up in the club, tagging along with my aunt and uncle since middle school, I think. Until the
other family members, right?
Yep. So, but I've been fluttering around in the background for 15 years now.
Okay. And we won't reveal what kind of car you drive currently until a little bit later. We'll come back to that. You are a Carnegie Mellon graduate and currently working in New York City. Tell us a little bit about, going to school and what you're doing now.
Okay. Well, I studied architecture. So that's a 5-year degree. So I did my time in Pittsburgh for 5 years and then moved into New York City to try to be closer to home. I found a nice classical firm that I've been working for the past 5 years. So that's my day job. But then by night, I'm doing photography, certainly by weekends. It started out as kind of a small-time hobby of the occasional car show. It sort of evolved into a pretty much full-time hobby. So I'm now going all around the country and even around the world to car dealerships, car shows, car museums. And
Must be part of your vacation plan now, just to go see some of these museums and some of these car shows.
well, if COVID would let me, I'd love it.
Yeah, yeah. We are a bit restricted these days, aren't we? Well, it's gonna get fixed. We're working on that. Everybody's working on that.
It gives me time to re-edit all my old photos.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we should talk about the fact that not only are you a photographer, but obviously you're an Instagrammer, which is really where a lot of your work gets shown. And obviously we mentioned this in the write up to this, but 62,000 followers, which is pretty impressive. You only follow 140 people, which I have to see who that list is. That's kind of an interesting. But tell us a little bit how you got started on Instagram and where it started with starting to put photos up there for you. What got you going in there?
So pure chance is what happened. I was at a local car show taking photos. It was the first time I went to a show with my big DSLR camera, and some random kid comes up to me and starts asking me, "Oh, what's your Instagram?" Like, that's a weird way to say hello. And that's when he introduced me to the whole idea of car spotting, that there's, a network of, young kids, kind of college age, 20s, who roam around to car shows, roam around to dealerships and museums, taking photos of cars, and then have their own Instagram page dedicated to nothing but car photography.
Right.
So I befriended this guy. He said, listen, make an account, great way to get all your photos out there. And started out growing slowly until a couple of years ago, it just exploded. It went from 3,000 followers to 60,000+. So I got to a point where I was uploading twice a day. The most exotic cars I could possibly find. If it wasn't at least a 6-figure car, it's not worth posting.
Right. Did you find it to be a little bit addictive at times, where you
definitely.
Yeah.
But it's so much fun.
Sure.
And it's fun to see where I've ended up now versus some of my old work, which I cringe when I look at it now.
Yeah. We all do, understandably. And I have to imagine, with all of those followers, you feel some sort of sense of responsibility too now. You're just trying to keep people entertained and so many
absolutely
liking your photos, right?
And I'll certainly curate what I post. Older cars aren't as popular. Most of my followers are younger,
right?
So, teens and 20s. So if they didn't grow up with it, it's not popular with them. So I'll try to gear it towards modern, new supercars and hypercars.
Okay. Well, I know you have a presentation that's going to show off some of your work. So why don't we jump into that?
All right.
Go ahead and stop looking at us for a little bit.
Yeah, let me go ahead and share my screen here. Let me know if this is coming up on your end.
Well, I can see it. I'm going to look to the technical team here and tell me if everyone else can see it. It's coming.
It's coming.
It's coming. It's on its way.
Okay.
All right.
Let me know when you see the tiled photos.
Exactly. I'm certainly seeing it. What I would say is we're up, and you should mention your Instagram name, Marshall, so that people can take a look at photos when we're done talking tonight.
Oh, sure thing. So it's Knute Motorsport, Knute Motorsport, one word.
Terrific.
You'll see a yellow Corvette show up in the little icon.
Now, that's the dead giveaway to the fact that maybe you're not currently driving a Porsche on track. But that's okay. We're going to come back to that.
Right, yeah, the one delinquent in the family, not driving a Porsche.
We like Corvettes just the same. They're very nice cars.
Someone's
all right.
in the V8 Rumble.
Yes, exactly. All right. So why don't we jump in and show off some of this work? Where you have this in order, so why don't you start? Where do you want to start?
All right. Well, I guess here's just a sampling of a bunch of the cars that I photographed over the years. But I kind of want to split it into 3 sections. So I do, mostly car shows, but also car museums and car dealerships. And then a little later on, I'll move into some tips and tricks, as well as a few photo shoot locations that club members can use when they go to the racetrack.
Okay.
Spots picked out for Pocono Raceway, for New Jersey Motorsport Park, and for Watkins Glen. So I think it would be cool for people to be able to photograph their own cars in a nice setting.
Absolutely.
But why don't we start out with a couple of the crazy car shows I've been to, starting with the first one that I went to. This was back in 2016. It's an event called the Ferrari Finale Mondiale. So it's an
Okay.
annual event that Ferrari sets up. It's typically only for their VIP customers. They race their cars around the track. But this time they were at Daytona International Speedway, which is a huge track and critically a wide track. So you can get a lot of cars side by side.
Yep.
And their goal was to set a new world record for the most number of Ferraris on a racetrack at one time. So they invited not just their VIP customers, but every North American Ferrari owner. So you can see kind of the variety we have here. The top row, LaFerraris in every color of the rainbow.
So the only, hang on one second, Marshall. The only thing is your presentation hasn't switched pages yet.
Oh, is it still showing the first page?
We're still showing the first page here, so we might have a technical difficulty.
Okay.
Why don't you try? Is it toggling on your end?
Let's see. It's on the second page on my end. So let me open the.
Need to share a different screen.
Oh, now I'm seeing it here.
Yeah, tell you what, I'm going to open the reduced file version. That might make it easier.
Okay. We're almost there, folks. We're almost there.
So I'm sharing the right screen again.
I didn't want you to start telling the story if we didn't have the shot up.
Let's see. Let me know now if it's going back to.
So we're still on the intro page.
Okay. How about now? Are we moving to the second page yet?
Nope, we haven't done that here yet. Nope.
Still nothing. Oh wait. Hang on one second.
Sure.
It says.
Now I've got the Ferrari Finale Mondiale.
There we go.
I think we're in business. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, are we moving back and forth now?
Yes, we are. Okay.
Excellent. Okay.
So restart your story again. Big
Okay.
white. Lots of
Sorry about that,
Ferraris.
guys. Bear with me here. Yeah, so this event, it's a Ferrari event, and they decided this year they were going to try to set a world record for the most number of Ferraris on a racetrack at one time.
Okay.
They had to invite everyone, every Ferrari North American owner. So I just want to give you guys a taste of the variety they had at this show. LaFerraris and every color of the rainbow. The two middle rows, we have vintage race cars, 250 Le Mans, 250 GTO, just regular expensive classic cars, 275 Nart. And I thought for me, actually, the coolest thing was all of the one-off cars. So there are a couple cars here, like see this gold one in the bottom left?
Yeah.
This one, it started out in life as a Ferrari 599, but a VIP customer had Ferrari put a custom body on it to make it look like a classic Ferrari 330 done by Scaglietti. Or this yellow one in the bottom on the middle. That one's an F12 TDF underneath, but it's been restyled to look like the old 275. So these are super VIP customer cars that you'd never think you'd see in a million years, other than on Top Gear's website,
Sure.
let alone in real life. But some of my favorite shots I got from this one were LaFerraris as far as the eye can see, custom historic liveried versions of the F12. And of course, an F40 social distancing before it was cool.
Going behind the wheel on that car, I just noticed.
There is, nope, just he put his nice red towels over the seats to protect.
There you go. There you go.
But the reason I bring up this show is not so much just because of all these cars, but because of the crazy story that happened to me and my buddies. So we were all in the parking lot taking photos of all the cars that were lined up for that evening's parade around the track. And an older guy comes up to us and says, hey, you guys look like you know your way around a camera. Would you mind awfully taking photos of my 14 Ferraris for me? Here, I'll pay you. And just starts handing out $100 bills to all of us. So we're like, really? This isn't a joke. We're not being pranked right now. Okay. So he brings us over to his lineup of Ferraris. Says, tell you what, pick out the good ones. Let's try to put them side by side together. So we tried to pair them up in interesting ways. Let's get his two special edition 599s. Let's put his LaFerrari next to the F40. And then turns to us and says, okay, listen, guys, this is a bit embarrassing, but I actually have more Ferraris than friends. So could some of you maybe drive my Ferraris in the parade tonight for the world record attempt? I was like, oh, yeah, actually, as it turns out, we suddenly don't have dinner plans anymore. So, so cut to the next photo, one of my favorite photos I've ever taken, which is me in the cockpit of a Ferrari 488 Speziale behind his LaFerrari on the banked turn on Daytona under the lights at night.
Wow.
In a $1 billion traffic jam.
Wow. No pressure, right? No pressure whatsoever.
Right, yeah. It's like, how did the stars align that way? I'll never be able to replicate that. So yeah, this was like one of my first ever car shows, and something crazy like that happens to me, and figured, never again in a million years will I have this kind of luck. Until that summer, when something else like that happened. So take a look at this shot. This was in Florence, Italy. I had no intention of taking photos that day. I was on a family vacation. We had just gotten off the plane, just gotten to the hotel, and we were all delirious and jet lagged. I was about to take a nap when I hear an engine revving. And what do you know? There is a random Lamborghini Miura rally celebrating the 40th birthday of the Miura. And they just happened to be stopping at our hotel that night and parking in the plaza outside. So, okay, grab my camera, run downstairs. I think I trampled a child in the process. But I got some cool photos.
One of these cars is amazing, but to see so many is hard to believe.
So they actually had 17 Miuras there. And each one is a $1.5 million car.
Yeah.
But I was so proud of how this one came out. You get the rainbow of, Lamborghini Skittles.
Yeah.
And, the old medieval Plaza Square. So I figured I'd start with those. Those were the two 1 in a million events that I'll never be able to replicate. Now let's move on to some stuff that all of us have the opportunity to see. Some major car shows. So I go to mostly car shows in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. And one of my favorite ones, in fact, the biggest one on the East Coast, is called Dream Ride, which is in Farmington, Connecticut.
Okay.
And this started out as just like a show for bikers, Harley Davidson riders. And then some cars joined. A few years later, some supercars joined. But now it's known for the craziest hypercars ever. So, take a look at the top row. We have a whole medley of Paganis. And then scattered elsewhere, we've got, McLaren Sennas in a Marlboro livery. McLaren Senna GTR. We have Koenigsegg's, Ferrari Monzas. The Tommaso P72. So, the variety of cars at the show is, really incredible. What I think it's most known for actually is McLaren number one. You can always expect to see half a dozen McLaren Sennas or P1s at the show.
Sure.
The big one though actually is Pagani. Now, Pagani has made less than 500 cars total as a company. Like forget Huayras.
Right.
Made, maybe 100 Zondas and just over 100 Huayras. And they have about 12 Pagani Huayras in attendance every year.
Wow.
There's actually one local supercar owner who owns 3 of them, including this yellow one, which he's named Big Bird. But he brings all of his 3 cars, and he invites all of his other Pagani owning friends to show up. And it got to the point that Pagani themselves started to realize, well, hang on, like we have a huge presence in North America. Let's bring some of our own cars. So Horacio Pagani, the founder, brought his own Pagani Zonda the past couple of years.
I don't know how I feel about the skirts. I'll be honest with you.
Right? Yeah, the weird like arrow skirts on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got some weird details. The skirts, the kind of winglets built into the taillights. You can see kind of like the pod. Periscope air intakes.
A little bit also, Jetsons, which is a very dated reference. Keep going, Marshall.
We'll also check out the windshield. That's not bad Photoshop. It's actually kind of chopped off halfway down the windshield.
Yeah.
Called the HB Barchetta. And they're going to make 3 of these. This is Horacio's. Each one will cost $17.5 million if you want one.
Trump change. Sure.
But I thought it was incredible that of all the car shows, this is the one that had the biggest Pagani presence, to the point that Pagani themselves thought, let's debut our newest, most expensive car ever at this, silly Connecticut car show. And other manufacturers have taken notice. namely Apollo, which is a new German manufacturer. So this is their new V12 hypercar, the IE, Intensia Emozione, Italian name for a German car company. I don't get it, but.
And it looked like you took that photo late in the day, unless I'm
I
mistaken.
did it indeed. And actually, that was the funny thing about this shot is I took this angle at least 5 times during the day. Right at sunrise, it looked awful. The windshield was full of condensation. The light was too harsh. I tried it at noon. It was okay. Tried it at 3 p.m. Still okay. But at nighttime, somehow this paint glows. And they actually call this car in particular the Golden Dragon for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Somehow this like shimmering paint job glows in dim lighting. So this is probably at like 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m. The sun was just starting to go down, and finally this car lit up. But take a look at some of the details on this thing. You can really get a good sense of what this paint job is like, this iridescent paint.
Yeah.
In this photo, it kind of like morphs from gold to red to blue to purple in places. But the details are insane. I mean, even by Pagani standards, by Lamborghini standards, this car is just a step above. I mean, check out the triple exhaust, this weird kind of Triforce looking thing. The
We're gonna need Jay Mazzola's paint expertise on this one, I think.
What's that?
We're gonna need Jay Mazzola's paint expertise on this car, I think.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what you'd call this paint job, and I'm afraid to ask how much it costs to get a pearlescent paint job like this.
Yeah. Hey, for folks who don't know about this show, when does it normally happen, and can anybody attend? How does it work?
Yes, it's a free show. It's always in, I believe, the end of August.
Okay.
I think it's end of August, but it's called Dream Ride.
Okay.
It's in Farmington, Connecticut. It's a free show. Just show up. It takes place over 3 days.
Okay.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday and Sunday are the big days.
Sure.
And on Sunday, they do a big parade. So it's a fundraiser for the Special Olympics. So all the athletes get to ride shotgun. The cars do a big parade around the town if you want to see the cars in motion.
Okay.
But yes, anyone is welcome. It's totally free. Get there early or else you won't get parking. They have some 2,000 cars in attendance.
Sure.
Terrific. But by far the biggest show on the Northeast and the craziest turnout. So let's move to another show. This one's also in Connecticut in Greenwich. So it's the Concours d'Elegance, and kind of like that Apollo, that Golden Dragon. Like this is a photo that really depends on the time of day. Because you'd think this show would be beautiful. It's this beautiful park right on the water in Greenwich, Connecticut. But the reality is, without fail, every year the morning has fog thick as pea soup. So all your photos are just gray and gross.
Right.
And then eventually the sun comes out, the fog burns off, and then the heavens open and it pours. And everyone gets in their cars and they drive home as fast as possible before they get dirty.
Right.
So you have a very narrow window every year when the fog just burns off and before the rain starts. So I was waiting all day for that exact moment to get this shot. So this is an Alfa Romeo Tz3. It's actually a Dodge Viper underneath. And the Italian coach building company Zagato gives it a new body.
Yes.
So they made it in the style of, I don't know if anyone remembers the Alfa Romeo Tz2 from the 60s. It was a classic Alfa Romeo race car. So they rebodied a Viper to look like, a modern interpretation of that classic Alfa Romeo. And it was one of the few cars to wear the Alfa Romeo badge in the mid 2000s here in America. But I thought this one came out great. I waited all day, got the perfect moment, and the red really pops against the green background, unless you're colorblind.
Yep. Terrific. Amazing.
And another Connecticut car show. This is in New Canaan, Connecticut. Caffeine and Carburetors. This one's another free show you can go to. They host, I want to say like 6 or 7 shows throughout the year. But the one to go to is this one, which is actually in Waveney Park, not their normal one in the town of New Canaan. The park is a much more beautiful setting for photos. And this is why you wait till the end of the show. Because, there's, again, 1,000 cars there, people everywhere. Wait till the end. Most of the cars will leave, but a few of the supercars will remain. And in this case, one dealership had their Jaguar Xj220 that they had just imported. And I was getting some cool shots of the car, but they weren't good enough. So I thought, you know what? I'm a young, agile monkey of a man. Let me climb a tree. So climbed the nearest tree, positioned myself just perfectly in the canopy. So, got the leaves coming down, making this sort of curtain over the top of the car, and it wasn't good enough. You can kind of see the road along the bottom here,
Yep.
but I needed something to cover that. Well, I didn't have any tree limbs, but I did have some sticks, so kind of did a very kind of ugly, hold a stick in front of the camera lens and try to get it just right. But
All been there, sure.
but I think it worked out. So you get a cool photo of a Jaguar taking a cat nap in the middle of the fall foliage.
Well done. Great shot.
And another shot from the same car show is a Plymouth Valiant. And I mean, I only include this just because, number one, the designers didn't have to flex this hard when designing a family wagon, but they did anyway. But the other reason is because I wish I could show you the background of this shot because it was disgusting. There were cars back there, there were people, there were picnic benches, trash cans. So you'll notice one thing I do quite often in my photos is I get a really, really low vantage point. In this case, the camera was lying down on the tarmac, so you don't see the undercarriage. So I'm using the car itself to block all of the gross stuff in the background.
Yep, makes sense.
So it's still in Connecticut. I thought this one was funny. So Herbie was randomly parked on the street, and it was in front of this like sketchy stucco gross building, telephone wires in the background. There was no way to try to get a nice, a nice photo out of it. So I figured, let's just work with it. Let's just play up the stucco building in the foreground, position the car in the bottom right third, rule of thirds.
Yep.
But the thing I really wanted to do with this was just look at the details. Whenever the background's terrible, zoom in and focus on the cool details. Especially for a movie car like this, you never know, as a racing steering wheel or stainless steel exhaust. Or I thought the custom license plate was cool, especially with the new New York plate, which doesn't look nearly as gross as the old orange ones.
So you just happened upon this car. Is that basically what?
Right, yeah. I was going to see the Porsche dealership in the background.
Yep.
That's originally where I was going to, and then thought, no, the Herbie is way better than, all the, they had some boring 911s there that day. So let's run across the street, get a few shots of Herbie.
Yep.
The only time a Volkswagen Beetle is more interesting than a Porsche 911.
It doesn't happen very often. I agree. Right.
But speaking of Volkswagen Beetles, let's go to the ultimate Beetle, Bugatti. So there's really not much of a story behind this photo other than some local supercar owner brought his two Bugattis to this one show, his Veyron Supersport and his Chiron, which was brand new at the time. I just thought it was cool to see the two of them side by side like this.
Amazing.
How often do you get to see any one of these cars, let alone both?
And again, you're probably not being given much choice in terms of like positioning these cars, right? You're just happening upon this situation. So you've got to make the best of what the situation gives you.
Definitely. I mean, if you could see my hard drive, what I'm showing you here is 1% of all the photos I've taken.
Yep.
So it's, overwhelmingly rejects. Put it in burst mode, take a gajillion photos as the car drives past. Hope I get a good one.
Yep. And we should we'll talk about your camera type. I know you said you're a Nikon guy.
I am, yes. So right now I have a Nikon D850, which is, a pretty serious camera, but a lot of the photos I've shown you so far were actually on my earlier one. It was a D7100.
Okay.
Kind of like, it was in like their bottom tier of DSLR cameras at the time. Okay. So like, the lens makes all the difference, really. If you have a good lens and you know what you're doing with it.
Right.
That's what's important. Like those photos of the Ferraris from that Daytona event, that was on my cheap camera with, a semi-decent lens.
Right.
So, you don't need a big expensive camera. Just get some good lenses, learn how to use them.
And just for the folks who are also, trying to think about how to take care of their photos after they take them, what kind of software would you recommend, or what do you use that you find to be most helpful?
So I use Adobe Lightroom. So I do all my editing there. I do use Photoshop if I have to, get rid of people or light posts, stop signs.
Right.
But all the major color correction comes directly out of Adobe Lightroom.
Okay.
So yeah, that's been my favorite, and I've been using that now for probably 3 years or so.
Terrific. Okay.
Makes a world of difference. But this car here, so we're sort of back into the Porsche family. And actually, this car has a pretty sad history as of recently. So it's a Gambala Mirage GT. It's
I
based
think
off.
I
of
may
Porsche
already know
Ferrari
this story.
GT.
Go ahead.
Have you heard this one?
I may have.
Yeah, it's a sad story, but it's a Porsche Carrera GT underneath, and then the German tuning company Gambala gives it more power, a new bumper, new wheels, a roof scoop, giant spoiler. And they only made 25 of these. So it was an extremely rare car, went for just shy of $1 million, or goes for just shy of $1 million on the market today.
Right.
And the owner of this one was under the influence of something, some undisclosed substance last summer, early morning in Manhattan, lost control and met the back of a minivan. And then decided, you know what, he could probably sneak back to the garage anyway. Didn't realize his front axle was snapped. Made it about half a block away and crashed again.
Ooh, okay.
So, yeah, sadly, this car is now a goner, which is really sad. So I'm extra thankful I got this photo. This was in the meatpacking district in New York. So, kind of a random place to see a car like this.
Yeah.
But kind of like the Herbie photo. I like the sort of diamond in the rough aesthetic of, crisp, cool car in kind of a gritty setting.
And nobody around it, by the way. No one standing near it, or is that
well, actually, I bet if I stood up, you'd see a bunch of people just behind the car on the street corner. There's certainly a mailbox back there as well. So, but again, you got to lie down in the filthy New York street just to get that good angle.
We understand. Okay, got it. Sacrifice.
So once again in New York, this one was cool, and I'm sure any of you who have seen Ford versus Ferrari recognize this car. This was one of the 3 cars that took the podium finish in 1966.
Thank you.
Yep. You're all going to hurt me for saying that. So this was actually the 3rd place car. But I thought this was cool. So they auctioned it at Sotheby's auction house, I want to say 2 years ago. And it was just cool to see this car in this setting. I mean, a race car, but in this fancy auction house. But it also just happened to be, the perfect car color scheme, this gold car in a pretty gold room. The brown marble, the warm lighting in the wine shop in the background.
Yeah.
But check out some of the cool details on this, like the salmon colored racing lipstick. Here you go. That kind of periscope looking air intake that you said looked so dated.
Yeah. Well, we know where it's
it was
from.
new and avant-garde. I thought the wheels were interesting. I mean, like, I would never think to see a car that's gold with red lipstick, turquoise wheels. And depending on the side of the car, you either have blue or pink center locks.
Right.
Kind of like a Porsche Carrera GT, a different color on each side with a different thread pattern.
Yeah.
So yeah, not much of a story behind the photo, but just a very, very cool car to see in person.
Agreed.
So now let's move to the complete opposite side of the world, to Dubai. This is probably the most mundane car I've ever taken a photo of, just a pretty rundown, run-of-the-mill Toyota Sequoia. This was out in the dunes. We were on a desert safari. Everyone was sledding down the dunes, and I thought, you know what, that car looks really appropriate in this one particular setting in the dunes with its tire tracks, with the shadow being cast. But the real reason I bring up Dubai is because of the car dealerships. Like, it is funny because in the Middle East, they have a totally different culture around exotic cars or wealth in general.
Yes.
In America, you buy a nice suit, you get it in navy or black, some subtle color. You buy your Porsche in silver or black. Again, some subtle color, stealth wealth.
Yep.
But in Dubai, you go with something crazy. For example, a chrome green Aston Martin with forged carbon fiber accents and silver leather. Yeah, actually silver, like sparkly silver.
Wow.
So this is a typical Dubai car dealership. And it's funny because I've been to every major car dealership here in the Northeast. You go to a Porsche dealership, you might see one 918 and then a bunch of regular cars. If you go to a Ferrari dealer, maybe one LaFerrari if you're lucky. This dealership, every single car was something truly special. A custom Aston Martin 177, Lamborghini Rebenton. Under the tarp here is a Lamborghini Veneno. But I thought this was funny. So, Porsche 918 Spider, right? Nice, tasteful silver car. this was the most common car I saw in Dubai. I would just see them on the streets, and at first it was, oh my god, a 918.
Right.
And oh, well, another one, okay, cool. And by the time I saw this one, I'd said to my buddy, like, oh, really, another silver one? It's like, in what other context would a Weissach package 918 Spider be something dull and uninteresting?
But you found a good spot to take a photo of it. You found the use of that light and the way that they had built sort of their dealership around it. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, so the lighting in the dealership was crazy. This kind of like, articulated panel setup, but they just happened to have the 918 perfectly parked underneath this, canopy lighting. I thought it made for a great shot. But take a look at some of the other cars they have there. A Singer Porsche 911.
Sure.
I'd never seen one of those before, and that was one of the more mundane cars at this dealership. It was kind of squirreled away in the back corner.
Yep.
Well, that's a $1 million resto mod, modernized 911. But that Aston Martin 177, that's several $1 million car. That was also squirreled away in the corner. But here were the cool ones. So remember that chrome green Aston from a few seconds ago?
Yep.
So that was made by Mansory, a kind of notorious company for making some like really gaudy cars. I mean, you saw the forged carbon, the chrome green, the silver, like they're known for making a very, love it or hate it kind of aesthetic.
Sure.
Well, this is also one of their cars, one of their earliest works back when they were a bit more tasteful. So it has, I don't know if you can see in the carbon fiber, it's this like weird square pattern, but they've also added, extra scoops in the front bumper, this little, I don't know, almost looks like, a bird, when a kid draws a bird in the sky, that little like wing pattern.
Yeah.
But a Mansory Bugatti Veyron, not just a regular Veyron. And this one here, it's the Pininfarina Hyperion. Started out as a Rolls-Royce drophead coupe, but then Pininfarina shortened the wheelbase, got rid of the back seats, gave it new wheels, new bumpers, new headlights. So now it's, the ultimate two-seater Rolls-Royce Boulevard cruiser.
Wow.
There's a case of like, wow, so not only do they have Rolls-Royces here, but custom one-off Rolls-Royces made by Pininfarina.
Now, when you walk into this dealership, does anybody care that you've got your camera with you? Or they all
So I always make sure whenever I go into a dealership, whether it's in Dubai or Italy or here in America, always ask the staff first. Is it okay if I take photos? Is there anywhere you don't want me to go? I don't want to overstay my welcome. I tell them, if a customer comes in, give me the signal and I'll be gone.
Right.
But yeah, so I walked in and they're like, yeah, it's totally fine. Take some photos. Generally at exotic car dealers, they don't sell many cars a month. And if they do, half the time it's just done over the phone. Or they might have just one customer come in a day. So they're pretty generous about allowing photographers in. It's very rare that someone will just walk in to buy a car and have to deal with a bunch of, shenanigans with cameras.
Right. Okay.
So let's go back to the Porsches. So I'm going to go through a bunch of German museums.
That'll make our members happy. Yes.
Right. So, I showed you car shows. I showed you dealerships. Let's go into museums. So this was in Germany in the Porsche Museum, probably the most famous Porsche of all, the Pink Pig.
Yes.
And it was funny. I'd seen this car in photos, but never really saw it up close. So I knew it was pink. I knew they painted it to have all the cuts of meat on a pig, but I didn't know things like it has a purple interior, bright red seats. The bumper is randomly painted red. It doesn't match the pink. It looks like a baboon's butt. And I thought this was cool, the Beechwood gear knob. For anyone who's seen Porsche Carrera GT, you'll notice the Beechwood knob. Well, here's where it traces its roots back to. But it kind of like that Apollo I showed earlier, that golden dragon. I took all these photos because there were just people everywhere. I mean, it's the coolest car in the museum. So I could get detail shots. I couldn't get the glory shot until the very end of the day. I overstayed my welcome, waited until the museum was closing when they were kicking me out. Finally got this one. Empty museum, just the lone Porsche Pink Pig with its cool little tail fins. This is why you wait till the end of the day. I can't recommend enough. Either get to the show early or stay late, or both if you can bear it. But this is why you'll get the perfectly clean shot, a museum all to yourself.
Yep. Well, this is actually a good car to talk about, Marshall, because we got a question asking, is there a color that's better to shoot than other colors? So like when you see a car, is there a color that works really, really well when you're trying to take pictures of it?
Generally, well, let's put it this way. A dark color is difficult. So black is a nightmare to take a photo of because it just acts like a mirror, especially
Right.
if it's a clean car. It'll
Right.
reflect everything, which
Including yourself. You and your camera will be reflected in the side of the car, right?
right, exactly. Yeah, I'll be reflected. The car next to it will be reflected. So I find generally like a mid-tone color works, sort of like a regular blue, a regular green. If it gets too light and you're in sunlight, it can get washed out.
Yep.
And you'll run into issues where the car will be in perfect exposure, but the background will be too dark.
Yep.
So you have to do some trickery in Lightroom afterwards. Although actually on the subject of colors, I find it funny because on my Instagram page, I get more interest in weirdly colored cars, even if it's a hideous color. Just if it's something unusual, something that isn't gray, silver, black, like most cars, it'll get way more attention. And nowadays, I think most of us in the Porsche Club have seen, the paint to sample cars.
Right.
Of custom colors is really making a comeback now that it's, much more publicized, much more well known.
Yep.
So an exotic color is definitely worth the extra price premium. But speaking of cool colors,
There we go.
this one. I wish they would bring this color back. It's like they have greens like this, but not a nice metallic green. But I just liked this photo because it was framed in such a cool way. They have these kind of like articulated dividing walls all throughout the museum. And there was just this one perfect little window where I could get, a great framing of, a cool car, cool color. So cool parting photo from the Porsche Museum. So let's move across town. This is to the Mercedes Museum, which is kind of a weird one for me because I prefer supercars. I want to see hypercars and particularly cars of my era, my lifetime.
You don't like the SO Lube oil delivery truck back there?
Right. Well, it gives you an idea of just the crazy breadth of Mercedes race cars. I mean, everything from, Le Mans racers to GT1 cars to racing semi-trucks, which is a thing that people watch. But in this museum was funny because Mercedes has been around for over 130 years. So their first cars look more like horse-drawn carriages than cars.
Right.
But they have cars from, pretty much every decade, cars from, 1890s, 1930s. Weirdly, they skip over the 1940s. Maybe Mercedes was involved in something in Germany in the 1940s that they're not proud of. It's weird. They skipped that era.
Yeah.
But then you get to, modern GT1 race cars like this. Seeing a CLK GTR in person was fantastic, especially with this lineup. But then also seeing their, vintage silver arrows. For everyone who's heard the modern F1 cars referred to as such, here's where it comes from. Silver was the official German racing color way back when that was a thing.
Yep.
And Mercedes held on to it. Let's go northern Germany. So the Volkswagen Autostadt is a weird place. It's kind of like Volkswagen land. So it's this like giant park dedicated to Volkswagen. You can test drive their new cars, and they have these pavilions dedicated to each of their subsidiaries. So the Volkswagen Pavilion, the Audi Pavilion, the Lamborghini Pavilion, the Porsche Pavilion. This was the Bugatti Pavilion. And if you're wondering what this paint job is, it's actually mirrored. It's like a chrome mirrored Veyron in a chrome room. And this one was a challenge because you were asking about colors a minute ago. Black reflects colors. Well, imagine a mirrored car reflects everything. So I had to wait all day long until there were absolutely no people in the building with me. But then I also had to pay attention to just reflections on the floor. I took a bunch of photos early, was looking at them as I was walking back to the car and realized I forgot to pay attention to the reflection on the ground. I need to, aim my camera down a little bit more, play with that reflection, see what I can do. So I ran back to the pavilion, took some more photos, and I try to be mindful of that much more now. If it rains and there's a puddle, I can try to do something with the reflection of the car in a puddle. It's not quite as easy as a perfect mirror, but
it's not. No,
I'm
it's
working on it.
Yep.
So another cool car they had there. And actually, this is probably my favorite car I've ever photographed, which probably comes as a surprise because most people think this is just a Volkswagen Golf, right?
You actually just answered one of the questions from our viewers that they're your favorite car to shoot, but this sounds like it might be it.
Yeah, oh, this is definitely it. I'll tell you why I love this one. Don't be fooled by the Golf shape. Look instead at the giant intakes, the side intakes, the swollen wheel arches. So this was a custom concept car that Volkswagen made in the early 2000s for like a Volkswagen Golf owners meeting. So they wanted to create the fastest Golf ever. And rather than just turbocharge it a little more, they said, okay, what's the biggest engine we have? And someone said, well, we're Volkswagen, we own Bentley, and they have a twin turbo 12-cylinder engine. Can we put that in the car? Well, not quite. Big engine, small hatchback doesn't fit. So they thought instead, why don't we just rip the back seats out and stuff the engine in the trunk? So you end up here with it's a mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, twin turbocharged, 650 horsepower Volkswagen Golf. And for reference, this came out the same year as the Ferrari Enzo, which also had 650 horsepower. So here's a Volkswagen hatchback that's just as powerful as the most powerful Ferrari of the era.
Right.
But this was also a cool shot because much like that Bugatti, I had taken my regular photos early and I was getting ready to leave and I took this on the escalator. So I was going down the escalator, getting ready to leave and thought, oh, wait a minute. I get this perfect little window kind of, below the floor, above the railing, through the support strut, frames the car really nicely. And you get the original Golf GTI in the background. So I ran up and down that down escalator about 20 times trying to get the right photo.
Is it a Corvette back there? Am I seeing? Am I?
Indeed you are. Yeah. The original Corvette, with the blue flame straight six.
53. Okay.
But yeah, take a look at some of the details of this. So like there's the engine, the 12-cylinder engine. This column in the background, that's this one here. So that's very much in the cockpit with the driver, this crazy power plant.
Yeah.
But you can see sort of the flying buttresses here. You can slip your hand through it, kind of like a modern Ford GT.
Wow.
But yeah, by far the craziest concept car I've ever seen. I'm not sure what possessed them to make it, but I'm very glad they did.
Hey, speaking of photographs, what is your go-to lens? What's the lens you sort of?
Oh, definitely my 24-70 2.8 lens. It's an expensive lens, but it's worth it. I mean, I use that 90% of the time.
Okay.
So occasionally I'll switch to my 50 millimeter. That'll give a better bokeh, better background blur.
Yep.
But it's a fixed lens, so it's not quite as versatile. So yeah, 24-70 2.8. That's the one to go with.
Got it. Okay.
There's another parting shot from the same museum, from that same escalator, Lamborghini Diablo Gt. Yeah, always see how you can use, environmental objects to play with the foreground. So another German museum, the BMW Museum. I'll talk about this car a little bit more later, but it's the concept version of the Bmw i8.
Right. Yep.
I thought this was a car that was best shown in detail because it's got some weird things. The clear hood with arrow underneath, the fully glass doors. I mean, not just like a glass window, but a whole door made of glass.
Yeah.
Moving flaps in the grille, the arrow design on the wheel, the strange kind of like hourglass wrapping bodywork. So, very cool car to see in person. And I thought it was funny in this first shot. I waited until all the people were out of the shot and then realized, wait a minute, that's a glass ceiling. Now I have to wait for people in the room above me to also clear out of the way.
Oh boy.
So waste another half hour waiting for the perfect moment, but it was worth it.
But you do have some tips on how to eliminate that, which we'll talk about in a minute.
I will, yeah. Well, yes, if you're good with Photoshop, I can show you how to deal with that.
We'll come back to that one in a minute. Okay.
Otherwise, patience. Truthfully, if patience doesn't work, I can use Photoshop, but I'd rather just wait an extra half hour and wait for the clean shot rather than waste a bunch of time in Photoshop.
Yep.
So last museum I'm going to show here, the Pagani Museum. This is a case of sort of better to ask forgiveness than permission. This was taken from the top of like a fire escape ladder. I figured, I'll just run to the top of that and get some photos and they can kick me out afterwards.
Right.
As long as I get my photos first. So don't think I'm very, very tall, and that's how I got this photo.
I didn't even know Pagani had a museum, so that's how much I know. That's true.
Well, yeah, they do, and this is it. Like, it's one room.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I mean, the Lamborghini Museum is, two massive rooms, upstairs, downstairs. Ferrari has two museums because they're very egotistical. Pagani has one room.
Right.
And speaking of Pagani, if any of you commute into Grand Central Terminal, you'll recognize this perhaps. This was from last year. Pagani had a 20th birthday party. So they booked space in Grand Central, brought 6 of their incredible cars. But this is the part that you were just getting to a minute ago. What do you do when you're in a really public transit hub and you just can't possibly wait for the crowds to disperse because it's Grand Central Terminal?
Right.
Well, you got to get clever, right? So don't you hate it when you go out in public and the public be there? So what I did here was took the same terrible photo over and over and over and over, but I paid attention to the background. So notice the, these panels in the background with all the writing.
Yep.
Take a look at this spot here, people in the way. But if you look at the photo below, there's a clean spot. So I can Photoshop that clean bit of background onto the original photo. Same thing here, people in the way. But here's the second shot, clean background, Photoshop that in. Somebody's arm in the foreground, let's Photoshop some more clean backgrounds into it. So you get a nice, clean composite image.
It works.
Right, yeah, private photo shoot in Grand Central, courtesy of Photoshop. So that's one thing I'll do quite often. If there's just someone walking in the background, I'll take 2 shots and just stitch together those little bits of clean backgrounds from one shot to the other. And you get a nice, clean photo with minimal effort.
You spend as much time in post on that photo as you did actually taking it, probably, right?
Oh, I spent hours in post on this one. I try to avoid that whenever possible. It's a nightmare, but
Right.
This car was worth it.
Right.
So another cool technique I've used in the past was light painting. So this is my dad's car, his GT4, and my buddies and I took this photo at midnight. And how do you photograph a black car at midnight with no flash on your camera? Well, you set it to a really long exposure. I think this was an 8-second exposure. And then my buddy had a light wand, just like a stick that makes light. Set the camera to go and then just run back and forth like a madman really quickly, waving the wand all over the car. Painted over the wheels, over the hood, over the side of the car, painted over the flowers in the background, anything you want to be illuminated in the photo. And you get this cool glowing shot. And I was so impressed with how this came out, a black car.
Yeah.
Dropped at midnight.
Really impressive.
And to that question from earlier, there's the reflection I was talking about. Black car. Fortunately, here it's just reflecting the driveway, not too distracting. But yeah, black cars can be a nightmare.
Yeah. That's a great shot.
Thank you. So let's get into some tips and tricks here. So the biggest simple tip I can offer is get a polarizer filter for your camera. So what is a polarizer? It's just a little piece of circular glass that screws onto the end of your lens and you twist it. And as you twist it, you'll see all the reflections will disappear.
Right.
And they're cheap. Like I've spent as little as $40 and even for my biggest, most expensive lens, shy of $100 for a polarizer. But I mean, look at the night and day difference. So
yeah, it really makes a difference.
My car in the driveway, but way less distracting when you activate that polarizer. So best $50 or so you could ever spend.
And this is the car you sometimes take out on track with us in DE.
It is. Yep. Yeah. This is my, well, I'd like to say daily driver, but I walk to work on a normal non-COVID year.
It's a weekend driver. Sure.
But yeah, so this is my track car, my Corvette. Okay. But yeah, get a polarizer. They're cheap. It screws right onto the ends of your camera lens. You can always still use the lens cap that clips right at the end of the polarizer as well. So do that. Cheap, easy way to make your photos look 1,000 times better. The other piece of advice I'd give you is zoom with your legs. So we have a tendency to be lazy. Just stand where we are and then zoom the camera until the car is in frame. So this was a statue I took a photo of in Spain. And the first one was from close up with a wide angle. And it accentuates the giant face of the cat and shrinks his body. And then I backed up 100 feet and zoomed in. And now everything's more squared and in proportion. So I think the second one looks a lot better here, but don't discredit using kind of forced perspective, depending on the car. Say it has a really big spoiler and you want to exaggerate that. Get close, wide angle, you'll really show off the spoiler. So look at a couple examples here. back to the Mercedes Museum. This was a concept car from a couple of years back, but same car, same kind of angle, just a slab-on rear shot. But the first one, it doesn't look that great. The car's kind of like blob-shaped. This rear aero valence is sort of blobby. You don't really see the back split window. The second shot from 50 feet further away, zoomed in, it like accentuates the haunches of the car, muscular haunches. You get the split rear window. The rear valence is now much more chiseled. So be mindful of that. Try taking the same photo from certain distances away. One of them is always going to look better. But here's some examples of using wide angle to your advantage. So I mentioned the spoiler. There's that golden dragon again.
Yep.
Biggest spoiler I've ever seen on a production car. So I lied down in the grass about 5 feet behind the car, wide angle lens, exaggerated as much as possible. Or that BMW
clouds as well that helped.
What's that?
The great clouds that helped a little bit.
Oh yeah, definitely. It likes to do that to me in the summer. Really nice day, and right as I'm getting the good shots, downpour.
Well, but overcast skies can sometimes help as well, right? Keeps you from having to battle with the sunlight.
Oh yeah, definitely. I would prefer some sort of cloud cover. It's always not great if you're in harsh sunlight. You get some nasty shadows, and Lightroom can kind of fix that. You can pull out the shadows, tone down the highlights, but you want to have some sort of like diffuse lighting.
Yeah.
But this BMW didn't have a spoiler, but it had this crazy kind of hourglass shaped bodywork. Okay. And I wanted to accentuate just how wide it made the car look, and getting right up close with a wide angle shot, I thought really accentuated that. So again, move with your legs, zoom with your legs, play around with it, see what angle makes the car look best. So now let's get into a few photo shoot locations you guys can use at the tracks we go to. So this is probably my favorite one. This is at New Jersey Motorsport Park, specifically Thunderbolt Raceway. Some of you may have noticed that airplane hangar right next to the bridge. Yep. Or maybe you blew right past it trying to get to the driver's meeting at 7 a.m. But on the left-hand side, right before the bridge, there's this gorgeous old vintage airplane hangar. And the cool thing is, right after the driver's meeting at 7:45, the light will be perfectly shining into this hangar. Perfect photo shoot location, perfect time. So put your car here, right? And yes, even a GT3 on slick tires won't get stuck in the grass.
Right.
So set your car up there, get this cool perspective with the roof beams, and you're only 100 yards away from the track. So it's not like you have to go out of your way to get a cool shot. Let's move to Pocono Raceway. One of the, probably the hardest track to get a good photo at, because it's chain link fences all throughout the infield.
Yep.
So this is my aunt's old Corvette, and I thought, actually this could be cool. Let's use the empty pit or the empty garages. There's usually one set of garages full of NASCAR stock cars. Then there's the ones that we rent, and then one in the middle that's empty all the time. So you can use that one. Pull your car in, frame it inside the open garage bay. You get kind of like the burning white hot light highlighting the car in the middle. I thought it was a cool aesthetic for a strange location.
Yeah, and the overexposed background actually helps it a little bit. It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it was something where I was debating, do I artificially, do I Photoshop over all the shrubbery in the background as well to make it look overexposed? I can't decide if that would be better or not.
Yeah, looks great.
But yeah, I thought it was a cool aesthetic to go for. And this is also at Pocono. This is that RV parking lot, the one that you blow past every time racing to get back to your to your run group.
Right.
But drive your car all the way down to the end so you can see as much of it in the background as possible. You get this cool perspectival view again.
Yeah.
And Pocono will always have some cool clouds. It's the weather there is tricky, but that'll work nicely. That'll make your photo look better.
Well, we probably need to start wrapping soon, Marshall, but I'll let you tell us a little about your Corvette here.
Left.
There's your Corvette at Watkins Glen.
So this is my car. This is my C6 Corvette. This is at Watkins Glen, and it's funny. I took this photo during the track walk. So one of the, I apologize to whoever was giving a really well-rehearsed speech at each of the corners and telling us how to drive the track safely. I was not paying attention at all. I was the guy all the way at the back taking photos of my car. But yeah, there's one day out of the 3-day weekends that we do a track walk. We hop in our cars, we drive from corner to corner, we hop out and we have a discussion about,
Yep.
elevation change, the best line through that turn. But I took advantage of that time to just set my car up on a cool corner. This is actually going down into the boot. But I had all the time in the world to set the car up, get the wheel turned a bit, and play with my polarizer, and just a few other shots with the I Heart New York sign in the background.
Yep.
Or even just some close-ups of the rumble strips. You see them from a distance and they just look red and yellow, but up close they're gnarly and they're beat up.
Yeah.
So a cool aesthetic. And the last one I have, this is also at Watkins Glen. It's actually just outside the track. So normally you would exit the track and turn right, go down the hill back towards town. But
Yep.
if you turn left instead, go about a quarter mile down the road and there's a farm off to the side of the road. You'll see this American flag. It just makes for a really nice scenic location. And again, all of these are, within 100 yards, or in this case, just a quarter mile away from the track. So you're not going out of your way to get a cool photo shoot location.
It's a great way to wrap up because that's a great looking Porsche.
Right. Yeah. Thank you to Paul Miller for letting me take that one out. You can see their logo in the
Paul
background there. Fortunately, the farmer was not angry about me trespassing.
There you go.
He didn't shoot Paul Miller's nice new Porsche.
Okay. Well, Marshall, listen, thank you for spending some time with us tonight. These are all terrific photos. And if folks want to follow you on Instagram, I'd recommend that they do. It's a great Instagram page, and you can see all of his work over the last couple of years on that Instagram page, right? There'll be more to come.
Oh, definitely. Yep. I'm uploading every day.
There you go. And Shannon, I'll turn it over to you.
Yep.
I'll step away. Thanks, guys.
Hi, everyone. Marshall, thank you so much for putting this presentation together. I loved every single picture. I could see the folks that we had online were just as wowed by some of the pics you were able to take. So thanks for all your time.
Well, sure. Thanks, Shannon. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. Just in closing, want to let everyone know for next month, our speaker will be Christina Nielsen, who drove the 88 Porsche in the IMSA race last weekend with Earl Brember. Is that how you say it?
That sounds correct.
Brember and Kathy Legge. And then I'm working with Mark Hartston at Porsche North America to have us book Ray Schaefer, Daniel Armbruster, and Pedro Moda as some speakers coming up in the future. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to send me an email at program@nnjr.com. And if anyone has any follow-up questions from tonight, shoot me an email. But thanks everybody for getting on, and hope to see you next time. Thank you. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Done.
Yeah, Marshall, that was awesome.